Hello and welcome back. We have been doing a lot of podcasts, which most of you would have seen. A lot of people have seen, hundreds and thousands, some even gone to millions. So people are watching those podcasts on Bo's Deception. A lot of people, a whole lot of people have bought the book, although I'm not very sure how many have actually read it. Because had people read the book, they would have discussed the facts, the new facts at least, which have been included in this edition. Now, people are watching, people are buying the book. So I can't say that there is no public interest. There is definitely, visibly, a lot of public interest. But still, I'm not very sure whether the government will do anything. Now, why am I saying that? I'm saying that because there is a lot of public interest, but that is not translating into public pressure, the pressure of public opinion. And unless that happens, and unless the mainstream media picks up the issue, the government is not going to respond, the government is not going to do anything on this. So that's the crux of the matter, the crux of the problem. But in all these discussions, the podcasts and other platforms that we have been talking on, amongst this discussion, one of the biggest stories has got lost. I had a great hope that this story would pick up. People would understand the implication of this story. But it appears not many have understood the real implication of this story. Yes, I'm talking about the story of Lieutenant General Shide. The story which has come from the Chinese historians. I don't think many people have understood or really grasped the gravity of the story. So I thought maybe I should explain it in a bit easy manner so that you get the gist of the story and the implications. I will give you a little more detail now in this video than what we have talked about in other shows. So listen to me carefully. Listen to what I am telling you. Try to grasp the facts. Now, if you look at the story of Netaji's plane crash, what is the story? Japan surrenders. Netaji gets the news a few days before the surrender of Japan. He comes to Singapore, calls for a cabinet meeting, a meeting with his senior officials, and INA officers. They discuss strategy, what is to be done. All administrative matters are taken care of. Then, on the 16th, he flies to Bangkok. In Bangkok, he meets his Chief of Staff, General J.K. Bhosle is there. There are other Japanese officers, other INA officers. He meets all of them. Day-long meeting. It goes on and on and on. And then, on the 17th morning, he reaches Saigon. In Saigon, he is told a plane is available, which is going towards Tokyo or wherever, which he should take and move out of that region. Then he negotiates for few more seats because in all there were 6 people with him that day. 6 of his top advisors and confidants. 6, okay? Keep the number in mind. There were 6 people traveling with him. 6 people reached Saigon with him. So he wanted all of them, he told the Japanese, he wanted all of them to travel with him. But the Japanese were adamant. They would spare only 1 seat. But then after a lot of hard bargaining, they spared 1 more seat. And Netaji chose, as you all know, Habibur Rahman. Then they rushed to the aerodrome in 2 cars. And with all the luggage that he was carrying, his suitcase, there were boxes which contained treasure, jewelry and everything, gold, jewelry and everything, documents. They are loaded into the aeroplane. He boards the plane takes off around 5 o'clock in the evening, and then it makes a halt at night at Turin, a place called Turin, and the next morning it again takes off, reaches Taipei, and after having lunch and everything, the plane again takes off from Taipei, it crashes, and Netaji is injured, taken to the hospital, and in the evening he dies. That is the story. Now, what are the components of the story? The components we have to break down to understand the implication of this new angle coming in and whether it makes any sense at all. The components of the story are these. Firstly, Netaji is told that one plane is available. So no plane was given to him for his own travel. A plane was scheduled to take off from Saigon, and according to the witnesses, there was this top Japanese general, Lieutenant General Tsunamasa Shide, who was traveling to take charge of the Japanese army in Manchuria. And there were some other Japanese military officers who were going to Tokyo. So the plane was scheduled, it was available, and Netaji was offered one seat, but then there was bargaining, and Habibur Rahman was accommodated. So the plane was not given to Netaji. The plane was carrying primarily Lieutenant General Shide, who was going to Manchuria to take charge of the Kwantung Army, and Netaji was accommodated. Netaji and Habib were accommodated in the plane, and the plane crashes. The story given out by the Japanese government on the 22nd of August. The plane crashes on the 18th of August. The story comes out on the 22nd evening. The story, Japanese story, official story, announces that Netaji and Shide both died in the plane crash. So that is the story. Sounds simple. Now there might be other things which we have discussed about in Bo's deception, which makes the plane crash absolutely improbable, almost impossible. It could not have happened the way it has been portrayed. That is another matter. But what about this Shide story, the Chinese angle? The Chinese story is that on the 18th of August, Lieutenant General Shide took off from Taipei in a plane, which was spotted by the American warships. The American warships alerted the Chinese army. The Chinese cautioned the pilot of Lieutenant General Shide's plane, asked it to land, but they refused. So they shot down the plane. The plane fell into the sea, and General Shide lost his life, most probably by drowning. The pilot survived. There was another person with them. There was another person traveling with Lieutenant General Shide. He also died. So both the top generals in that plane died. The pilot survived and was captured and was interrogated. This story, this version from the Chinese historians has come out from the interrogation report of that the Japanese pilot. Now the questions start arising. Is it at all a probable story? Can it be true? So let's see. Can it be true? Who is giving us the story? The story is being given by the Chinese military historians, the historians associated with the People's Liberation Army. Just like our historical division in the Ministry of Defense writes our official histories, the PLA writes its official history. And these historians are associated with the PLA. So it has to be taken as a kind of official history. Do the Chinese have any interest in this? Any stake in this story of Shide and Netaji? No. Is there any reason why they will tell a false story? No. There is no reason. Then, the next question, does it fit into the overall scheme of things? Because come to think of it, if General Shide took off from the Saigon airport on the 17th of August, there were a whole lot of people in the aerodrome that day. A lot of people would have seen him. And in all the investigations that happened after the plane crash, Netaji's plane crash, I mean, so-called plane crash, people would have spoken. They would have told the interrogators that General Shide was traveling in that plane. And if they do, then the Chinese story is contradicted. But what do we see in reality? Let's start at the beginning. Now, once the story of the plane crash reached India, the Allied forces started their own investigation. The government of India, which was the British government, the British Raj, the British government of India, they also sent two teams headed by top officials of the Intelligence Bureau. One of them was PES Finney. Another of them was most probably WFM Davies. So Finney went to Bangkok and Davies went to Saigon. Saigon, the airport from where supposedly both Netaji and Shide took off in that plane. Now, what did they find? What they found is very interesting. Now, I'm retrofitting the Shide angle from the Chinese historians into this scenario, which we knew all along. There were big questions, but I'm coming to those questions separately. Now, what did Davies and Finney find? Davies and Finney, they found two most important things. That firstly, all documents were destroyed, but only 4 telegrams were very carefully preserved. As if these 4 telegrams were meant to be found by the British investigators. They were preserved in that manner. Just imagine the scenario. Every document is destroyed. Only 4 telegrams from Hikari Kikan, the telegrams exchanged between Hikari Kikan and the Southern Army of Field Marshal Terauchi. Those telegrams survived. And what are those telegrams about? Those telegrams are about the last movement, the so-called supposed last movement of Netaji. So the Southern Army Command is asking Hikari Kikan to inform the Indian community or the Asian community that Netaji had left Saigon for Tokyo and he would return within the next few days. Does it sound credible at all? Just think about it. This movement of Netaji, if it happened at all, it would have been top secret, because he was leaving the theater of war in that region and moving to Tokyo to talk to the Japanese government. I'm going by the official Japanese story. This is the official Japanese story, that he was going to Tokyo, because the Japanese government was still not talking about his possibility of going towards Russia. So, does it sound probable at all that the Hikari Kikan would announce, oh, your Netaji has gone to Tokyo to talk to the Japanese government and he will come back, as if to inform the Allied forces? The American forces were moving in. They were already moving in Japan. They were closing in on the southeastern region. The British forces were coming down, Burma, Thailand. And in this scenario, when the region is being encircled by enemy forces, you think the Japanese were so stupid that they would just go and announce that movement of Netaji, where he is going, when he is going to come back, whether he is going to come back at all or not. And then another telegram asks Hikari Kikan to tell Indian community about the plane crash and Netaji's death. There is another telegram which says that on the 20th, a telegram of the 20th August, which says that Netaji's body has been flown to Tokyo. 20th August. By then the cremation had also not happened. But the Southern Army and the Hikari Kikan are manufacturing telegrams which claim that Netaji's body had already been flown to Tokyo. So these telegrams were in all likelihood planted. And if we can understand now, there is no reason why the British Intelligence Bureau officers, they were top-notch spies. There is no reason why they wouldn't understand. And they did. And that is exactly what they wrote in their report. That if this is a part of a massive deception plan, this is exactly what they would have done to mislead us, to plant these telegrams so that we find them. Now, Davis also went to Taihoko, Taipei of today. And apparently he talked to a few people, went to the hospital where allegedly Netaji was treated. But surprisingly, in all the reports that they filed, there is no report on what happened in Taipei. What did Davis find? We don't know. That's another big gap. And that's a mystery. When Finney and Davis were writing about everything else, when they were reporting that they talked, Finney probably talked, or Davis maybe, they talked to the airport in charge, aerodrome, the person in charge of the aerodrome, asking for a passenger's list, a passenger's manifest. And he was being told that everything has been destroyed. Nothing remains. No record remains. So everything, every little bit of detail is being reported, but not this. That what he found in Taihoko. What was he told? Who did he talk to? What were the findings? And if he went there all the way, didn't he look for documents that would confirm Netaji's and Shridhar's death? We don't know because there is no report. Surprising and very fishy. Now, this is just one aspect of it. From the traditional story, the story that we have deconstructed in Bo's deception, what have we found? There we have found something very strange. Let's assume that the plane crash in Taipei happened and Shridhar died. Now the question obviously is, how did he die? The death of Lieutenant General Shridhar is also immersed in controversies. Why so? It should have been simple. Why am I saying that it is immersed in controversies? Because the Japanese witnesses in Taipei, they don't agree with each other as to how Shridhar died. Some of them, I will not go into the detail to confuse you. I will not give you names and everything because I am not giving you graphics and everything. I'm just talking. So I will try to keep it simple. So what happens? Some people say that Shridhar, just as the plane crashed, Shridhar and the two people sitting around him, the pilot and the co-pilot, died instantly. Okay. Now on record, there are other claimants who have said that Shridhar was badly injured, badly burned, but he was brought to the hospital where Netaji was brought to. And he saw Shridhar being brought in a stretcher. This is on record in the Shanwas committee proceedings. How is it possible that somebody saw him dying instantly and somebody else saw him being taken to the hospital in a stretcher? So one of them is not telling the truth. Now, the story gets more interesting. There was this guy called Makoto Nakamura. Makoto Nakamura was the officer in charge of the Taipei aerodrome. And he was there when the crash happened. And his team with him got into the rescue operation. So Nakamura told the Shanwas Khan committee that after all the survivors had been taken to the hospital, the plane was still burning. There was a lot of fire. And then after the fire was put out, they entered the plane and saw 3 completely burnt bodies. The flesh was completely burnt. The only part which was remaining was the navel area and the bones. The flesh had completely burnt off. So what did Nakamura do? He got his men, got the bodies out, took out their entrails, the navel area and other things which survived the burning, and dug the airport ground and buried them there. And then put the bones of the three people in three boxes and sent them to the nearest temple, the Nishihonganji temple. The Nishihonganji temple, the same temple where Netaji's so-called ashes were also stored, preserved after the cremation. So understand the sequence. Nakamura takes out the bones and the remains of whatever was there, digs the ground and buries the entrails, puts the bones in three separate boxes and sends them to the temple. So they should be there in the temple. Well and good. Now, let's look at another Japanese witness. A witness who witnessed Netaji's death. And he told the Shanwas committee that when he was there in the hospital, attending Netaji, sitting near Netaji, he was told by the medical officer that Shide was being treated in another hospital. So another angle. Now, let's hear what another very important person had to say. The Chief of General Staff of the Formosan Army, General Isayama. Now, General Isayama is very important here because General Isayama and Lieutenant General Shide were classmates. They knew each other. They were good friends. But surprisingly, when Shide arrived on the 18th, Isayama was not there to receive him. But Isayama deposed in front of the Shanwaskan committee. And what did he say? He claimed that Shide was cremated. Shide was cremated. So, Shide was cremated. That is Isayama's story. So far we have got what versions? We have got the versions that when the plane crashed, Shide died instantly. Nakamura said that he took out the body, buried the entrails and put the bones in a box, 3 boxes for 3 people, and sent them to Nishihonganji. There was another person who saw Shide being brought in a stretcher to the same hospital where Netaji was being treated. Juichi Nakamura, the interpreter who saw Netaji die, gave witness for that. He said that he was told by the medical officer, Japanese medical officer, that Shide was being treated in another hospital. So according to different people, Shide was at different places at the same time. When does this happen? This happens when you cook up a story. When 4 different people don't see the same thing together, but they try to reconstruct an imaginary story, their versions differ from each other's. Now, Juichi Nakamura, who was told by the medical officer that Shide is being treated in another hospital, he added another bit of information. This Nakamura, don't confuse him with the Makoto Nakamura of the aerodrome, in charge of the aerodrome. So, 2 are different people. This is the interpreter Juichi Nakamura. So, Juichi Nakamura was also a part of the team that went for the cremation and collected the remains and brought them to Nishihonganji temple. Netaji's cremation, I mean. So when he brought Netaji's remains to the Nishihonganji temple in an urn, and as it entered the temple, Juichi Nakamura told the Shanwaskan committee that he saw there was another urn, one more urn near the shrine. And he was told by the priest that urn contained the remains of Lieutenant General Shide. Okay? So whatever was in the wooden box, which was prepared by Makoto Nakamura, had turned into an urn. So you can say that, okay, they had taken it out and put it in an urn. Now, Makoto Nakamura had said there were bones left. The bones were intact. Flesh had burnt, but the bones were intact. So there are long bones in the body. That's why you get to put them in a wooden box. So how did that wooden box and the big bones inside turn into ashes to be put in an urn? Who did that? If you were telling me that they were cremated and the bones were cremated, they were burned and then the ashes were put in an urn, who did that? There must have been some record. Somebody would have testified. Somebody would have come forward and claimed responsibility. Nobody did. And most important, there is absolutely no mention of Lieutenant General Shide in the cremation records, which the Taiwan government gave to Justice Mukherjee Commission. So, that is, and there is no death certificate. Even more important, there is no death certificate for Lieutenant General Shide. The closest thing that our inquiries, first the Shanwas Khan committee, which the document which they were able to get hold of was a piece of document belonging to the demobilization unit, where an application was made on behalf of General Shide for his promotion. The promotion was not granted, but in that document it was mentioned that Lieutenant General Shide died in Formosa by war. It was death by war. Okay? Now, because I am bringing this topic up, this nature of death. Death by war is what fits into the description of the Chinese. Death by war is not what happened according to the Japanese story. That was an accident. That is death by accident, not by war. There was no offensive. Nobody was attacking the plane. The plane broke down and he died, if that is true. So that would have been death by accident, not by war. Death by war is what the Chinese did. They shot down the plane. That is death by war. And it happened near Taiwan. It happened near Formosa. So then, that fits the description. And this document was generated in 1947. So you see that there is no consistency about Shide's death. The whole thing is very, very smoky, nebulous, and people are not telling the truth. The Khosla Commission tried hard to get hold of any document which would prove Shide's death. They could not. The Japanese War Office formally informed our government that there is no record related to Lieutenant General Shide's death. Yet, somehow miraculously his ashes turned up in an urn which were taken to Japan and handed over to his family. Now, Japanese people are very trusting kind of people. So they trust what the government tells them. The family also accepted and trusted, as if they had any other option. They didn't have any other option. They had to believe what the government was telling them. So the ashes were handed over and they accepted it. But when you look into the details of the story, it's very, very clear that something is very wrong. Because Shide's death is another hoax, another smokescreen. But we were still not sure what could have happened. We could see, and that's what we have written in Bush Deception. We could see, we can very clearly see that things are not what they appear to be, and that is why more questions are being raised. But now this Chinese story brings down the entire hoax. Just now I was talking about eyewitnesses. Now, as I said, that if Shide really flew from Saigon on the 17th of August, people would have seen him and they would have given eyewitness accounts to the interrogators. Because the Chinese are claiming that Shide had reached Taiwan, Shide had reached Taipei much before, many days ago. He did not arrive in Taipei on the 18th of August. He was there from at least the beginning of the month, at least for the previous 2 weeks. He was there. Because he was supposed to take charge of the Kwantong Army, and near about the time when he was supposed to fly, the Japanese emperor announced the surrender. So he was not sure what to do because he had a written order to go and take charge in Manchuria. But on the other hand, the emperor had announced a surrender. So he was in a dilemma. This has come from the interrogation of the Japanese pilot by the Chinese. The Shide was in a dilemma, what to do. Finally, when he did not receive any other order, whether to stay put or to go and join, he made up his mind and decided that he would go and take charge. He would go to Manchuria and take charge of the Kwantung army. And that is when his plane was shot down. So this story says that he was sitting in Taipei for a long time, at least for 2 weeks. And if he was sitting there for 2 weeks, there is no question of him being with Netaji in Saigon on the 17th of August. And mind you, the Chinese historians have not linked Shide with Netaji. There is no mention of Netaji there. Because Shide's death is a different story, a standalone story. A Japanese general killed. That is the story. So let me come back to the witness part, because this is where it gets really interesting. The witnesses, there were Japanese witnesses and then there were Indian witnesses. So as I said, that there were 6 people traveling with Netaji. And then there was the Hikari officers, the Japanese military officers and others who were there in the Saigon airport when apparently the flight took off at 5 p.m. on the 17th of August. So the Japanese very meticulously described Shide, took his name, described how Netaji interacted with Shide and all. But what about the 6 people accompanying Netaji? Of these 6 people, let's break it down further. Of these 6 people, Habibur Rahman and S.A. Iyer have to be treated separately. Why? Because Habibur Rahman was part of the cover-up plan. And S.A. Iyer was one of the persons who wrote the Japanese press release announcing Netaji's death. So he was part of whatever bigger game he was playing. And we have written about Iyer's involvement with the treasure loot. I'm not going there now. Read the book. If you have read, you know. So, Iyer and Habib are 2 people who are involved in cover-up of different sorts. So we have to look at the 4 other people. Who are the 4 other people? The 4 other people who were there with Netaji were Devnath Das, a very prominent figure in Southeast Asia, leading the Indian Independence League, joined Netaji's cabinet, a minister. In his deposition, Devnath Das had no idea about Shide. He had no idea who were traveling with Netaji in that flight. If Shidai would have been there, he was prominent enough, a big enough name for Devnath Das to have known. Because earlier, Shide was in charge of the Burma army, where the INA was operating. So Devnath Das would have known. But he doesn't even utter the name of Shide. On the contrary, he says he didn't know the people who were flying with Netaji. That's number 1. Who's number 2? Number 2 is Gulzara Singh, another top-ranking confidant, a very close person to Netaji. Gulzara says the same thing, that he had no idea who were flying with Netaji in that flight. Forget Shide. No mention of Shide. Who's the other person? Other person is Pritam Singh. Even Pritam Singh does not utter the name of Shide. All that he says is some general was flying in that plane. He does not take the name of Shide. So we are left with only one other person, the 4th person, Abid Hassan. Abid Hassan appeared in front of Khosla. And he had almost lost his memory, it appeared, because he was confusing things, and he was most probably deliberately. He was making up other stories and all. So, whatever. I mean, let's not get distracted there. Whatever he was saying, he was saying. But what about Shidei? Abid Hassan was an experienced person. He has been with Netaji for so many years. And if Shidei was there, he would have known. Did he see? No. He had no idea that anyone with the name of Shidei was at all present. So, what do we find? What do we find? We find that there were eyewitnesses. But it was only the Japanese eyewitnesses who said later on, that Shidei was present in Saigon on the 17th of August. When Shidei's death was an established fact, when it was known he had died, the hoax was that his death was linked to Netaji's death, to make the story, the cover-up, more credible. Otherwise, how is it possible that the 6 topmost advisors of Netaji, they wouldn't see Shidei, except Habib and Ayar, of course. Habib was part of the plan, so he would, if he was told that later on that ad on Shidei, he would do that. Ayar was part of a cover-up of the loot of the treasure. And he was drafting the press release, where he was told by the Japanese, put the name of Shidei in that press release. So he would do that. What about the other 4? If Habib and Ayar could see Shidei, why couldn't the other 4 see? What happened to them? So you see, the Chinese story appears quite credible. Now, what needs to be done? What can we do? We have the story, we have given the story to you, we have given you the source. What do we need to do? We can't do anything now. We can carry on our research, we can dig more for more information, more documents, which we are doing anyway. We are reaching out to international scholars. What needs to be done has to be done by the government of India. They have to ask the Chinese historians that what is this? What kind of story is this? Tell us more. And then they have to ask the Japanese government that the Chinese, who are non-interested parties in this, they are claiming this. So what story have you been feeding us all these years? But as I said, I don't have much hope that the government will do anything at all, because there is no public pressure. And until that happens, we will have to depend on what the research throws up, what we are able to find on our own. That's all for tonight. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to support what we are doing. Without your support, we can't do it. We cannot carry on. We'll come back with more, but that's all for now. Jai Hind. Good night.